Thomas Jefferson became president as a result of the hotly contested election of 1800, which we looked at in the last presentation. His first term, he served 2 terms. His first term as president was very successful, much more so than his second term. I think the greatest legacy he left was his purchase of Louisiana, this massive area of the United States that we'll see on a map in a minute. The original problem had been access to the mouth of the Mississippi. Jefferson believed strongly in the importance of agriculture, and a lot of these farmers in the valleys of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers needed a way to ship their goods to market, to the Gulf of Mexico, which would then allow them to ship goods overseas. But Spain and later France controlled the mouth of the Mississippi. Napoleon of France had regained control of the Louisiana territory from Spain in return for various territories that Spain acquired in Europe. And Jefferson was very alarmed by this because France was a great power, much more powerful than Spain was. Spain was on the decline. So he sent 2 representatives to Paris to negotiate with the French, James Monroe, the future president, and Robert Livingston. They were instructed simply to purchase the area right around the mouth of the Mississippi and generally around the present-day state of Louisiana. But they were very surprised to learn that Napoleon was willing to sell all of his territory in North America, a much, much larger piece of land. Of course, communication was very slow across the Atlantic, so they had to make a decision about whether to offer more than Jefferson had authorized them to offer, and they decided to do it, which turned out to be a very shrewd decision. A little background on this: Napoleon had wanted Louisiana so that it could supply food to his colony in Haiti. But there was a revolution in Haiti, which gained independence from France. So now Louisiana didn't have nearly as much significance to Napoleon. He also needed money because he was up to his neck in European wars, pursuing his ongoing hobby of trying to conquer Europe. And as a result, he was willing to sell this huge amount of territory. The purchase price for the entire Louisiana territory was $15 million. This has to be one of the great bargains in history. Now, we can see from a map here, this is at the time of the American Revolution. This had been Spanish territory, Spanish Florida, and this whole area here west of the Mississippi was controlled by Spain. Now, when France acquired this area west of the Mississippi, that complicated matters. The real issue here at first was access to the mouth of the Mississippi, because all of the farmers along the Ohio River Valley, the Mississippi River Valley, if they were going to ship their goods either to foreign countries or to the east coast of the United States, they needed to come down here, surround or go around the southern tip of Florida, and then come up the east coast of the United States, or go to the West Indies, or across the ocean to Europe. So this was the reason that the purchase was considered so important. Now we see the area that Jefferson ultimately acquired. It is this massive area in green here, which included much more than this little area to the south here. This was French territory. Spain had retained possession of Spanish Florida, and they continued to possess areas out here farther to the west. So the purchase of Louisiana was a major accomplishment for Jefferson. He wasn't sure that he had the power under the Constitution to take that step, but he acted on the basis of an opportunity, and he simply seized the opportunity. Um, the next year, he commissioned Lewis and Clark to take an expedition here to explore the areas that the United States had just acquired, and to go beyond that, all the way to the Pacific. Um, they had three goals. One, they wanted to find river routes to the Pacific. This reminds us of the old desire for a Northwest Passage. But even in the early 19th century, the early 1800s, there were no good maps of this area, and European Americans really didn't know for sure whether there might be routes all the way to the Pacific. Uh, Jefferson wanted them to contact Native Americans and sort of get the lay of the land, to begin to establish relationships of some kind with them, and also to assess natural resources. What had the United States bought? Lewis and Clark brought back many, many notebooks sketching some of the plant life and other resources that they encountered. And notice that this was a long expedition. It lasted for a couple of years. Now, another major issue of Jefferson's presidency was his relationship with the courts. John Adams, in the last days of his presidency, appointed 16 federal judges, a large number of judges, and they were known as midnight judges because he did this at the last minute of his presidency. The Democratic Republicans of Jefferson were very upset with this. It looked like Adams was trying to take over control of the court system for a long time, and there was an effort to impeach some judges. Judge Samuel Chase, Justice Chase of the Supreme Court, was actually impeached by the House. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because they believed that they simply wanted him out of there. The Senate, however, refused to convict him, so he remained in office. And the precedent, the pattern that was established there, is that impeachment should be used for crimes, for serious offenses, and not simply as a tool to remove people that the other party doesn't like. The most important appointment that Adams made late in his presidency was John Marshall. Marshall was a Federalist. He had served with Washington in the Revolution, and that experience helped to teach him that a strong federal government was necessary. He was a believer in strong federal power. He served all the way until his death in 1835, and he became the most influential Supreme Court justice in early American history. His perhaps most famous case was the case of Marbury versus Madison. I won't go into the details of the case, but the important thing to remember about this case is that it established the principle of judicial review. In the process of deciding this particular case, Marshall and his court struck down an act of Congress. In other words, they said the law that Marbury was basing his case on was unconstitutional. That had never been done before in American history, that the court would strike down an act of Congress. Now it had been, and that principle has been invoked numerous times in American history, although after this, not until 1857, not for 54 more years, in the infamous case of Dred Scott, which we'll deal with later on in the course. There was another case in this period known as Fletcher v. Peck, Fletcher versus Peck, which decided that a federal court could strike down state laws also, but not just for any reason, but because they violated the Constitution of the United States. Now, in the election of 1804, Jefferson was elected by a vast landslide. He was running against the Federalist, C.C. Pinckney, and it was no contest. There wasn't that much popular voting at this time. It was mostly electors chosen by state legislators. But the results were overwhelming, 162 to 14. The issues all favored Jefferson in this election. He had vastly increased the size of the United States with the Louisiana Purchase. That was very popular. He had kept the country at peace. And John Adams, who had, as we saw in the last presentation, had promoted the Alien and Sedition Acts, which were very unpopular. Jefferson simply allowed them to expire. They had a time limit, and he let them expire and did not attempt to renew them. So on all of these issues, he had very popular positions, and the election was a landslide. He also had prosperity. The country was doing well. He lowered taxes. He allowed the whiskey tax, which was so much hated, to expire. So he had everything going for him. Traditionally, the two most important issues in a presidential campaign are peace and prosperity, and he had both and more. Jefferson's second term was not nearly so successful. It was dominated by issues of foreign policy. One of them was the Barbary Wars. There were pirates along the north coast of Africa who demanded tribute. In other words, if a nation's ships were going to sail the Mediterranean, they had to pay tribute, which is basically a bribe, to these pirates in order to be left alone. The United States objected to that and sent a military force, a naval force, and now Tripoli, of course, is present-day Libya. And this is the origin of the line from the Marine Corps hymn, "The Shores of Tripoli." From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. If you are familiar with the song, that comes from this period right here. A larger issue during Jefferson's second term was one that had nagged the United States for some time, and that was the British impressment of American sailors on the high seas. Impressment here means they boarded American ships forcibly and took some sailors into the British Navy. These had been British citizens before the Revolution, and the British were acting in a very high-handed way and simply felt free to impress American sailors. Also, since they were at war with France, with Napoleon's France, they were free to, decided that they were free to interrupt American shipping. France and Britain both took it on themselves to stop Americans from shipping things to the other side. Jefferson had two choices in this situation. He could go to war, which he really didn't want to do. These were major superpowers. The United States did not have a large military, and Jefferson believed in small government, and he knew that war produces large government. So his response was what was called the Embargo of 1807. He stopped almost all American shipping because then it couldn't be interfered with by either the British or the French. This was seen as an alternative to war. It was not very effective. There was lots of smuggling, and it's very difficult, given the size of the U.S. coastline and the desire of traders to get around this, to really enforce it. Later, what we'll look at in the next presentation, the next U.S. president, James Madison, made the other choice. He opted for war, and the result there was the War of 1812. But that is a subject for another time, so we'll stop right here.